everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the new definition of responsible tourism presented by Kathy Ritter, Director of the Colorado Tourism Office. Before we begin, I have a couple of housekeeping notes for you. You've been muted by me, the host, but we encourage you to submit any of your questions to the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will reserve all questions for the end of this session. Finally, this presentation is going to be recorded and posted onto our Go West Summit website on the Education Week page, so you can review this information at any time. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Kathy. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this presentation. I'd love to take you along on the journey of how we arrived at a new definition of responsible tourism through these past few very interesting months. Oops, Julie, I think we need to do a little more, one more function for screen sharing. There we go. All right, we just figured this out. Oops.
Let me try one more time, Kathy.
Thanks, Julie.
If not, I can control this for you.
Okay.
All right, go ahead and give it a go.
Oh, darn.
Perfect. If you prompt me, I can go ahead and control it for you.
It says I can control, but it's not giving me control. Let me try one more time. No, I should be getting, I should have control. I'm sorry, Julie, it's just not working this time.
No problem. I'll try it one more time. I think I clicked something.
Okay, yep. We're on. Okay,
everyone.
Thank you. All right, but first I wanted to talk to you about the fact that tourism is really a high stakes business in Colorado. I'm sharing with you the most recent numbers that we received from Longwoods International and Dean Runyon Associates. These represent the new benchmark for recovery. It may be 3 to 4 years before we see numbers like this again. I hope sooner rather than later. But at last count, Colorado tourism was generating $24.2 billion annually. And we'd increased the number of travelers by just 3%, even though we'd increased traveler spending by over 7%, well above the national average last year. Whoops, I've lost my control again, Julie. There we go. Travelers, very importantly, generated almost $1.5 billion in tax revenues. I always share this with my state tourism partners because this is a case study in itself as to why we need to get tourism back on its feet again in Colorado. But one of the things that we were, would you please advance for me, Julie? There we go. One of the things that we were seeing right away after we started seeing this downturn in arrivals, which started taking place in early March and of course continued and hit bottom in April. We've been seeing some signs of recovery since then, but very early on, even as early as April, we were starting to hear concerns from some of our tourism partners and in our destinations about all of the sacrifices that had been made, perhaps being negated by the arrival of outsiders who might be bringing COVID infection with them to our destinations. And so we were hearing these concerns expressed so widely in many of our famous destinations and around our state that we knew we had to come up with a meaningful response to this concern, or we were going to be risking recovery. And as you can see from this slide, yes, Colorado tourism spending has plunged over the years, where over these past few months, we're actually down about $6.38 billion from where we were this same time last year. Just want to share with you that Colorado has really been among the leaders nationally in terms of getting coronavirus under control. There's been an enormous commitment in our state, but as you can see, this very disturbing slide showing the incidence of new cases worldwide, the Western Hemisphere, has really been lagging behind the rest of the world in terms of getting ahead of this transmission rate. But we've really knuckled down in Colorado, and as you can see, our incidence rate over the last week, in fact, was really well below much of the rest of the United States, and but on a par with the northeastern United States. But there was much interest in making certain that we were doing nothing to risk this status, which had been so hard won. At the same time, we know that people are ready to travel. We were seeing almost a determination to travel. This is an article from Travel and Leisure over the weekend, and you know, they're saying the lack of travel is truly taking an emotional toll on people. And you know, and we're seeing this. Travel is a basic human need, and people are increasingly frustrated, you know, when they can't travel. This was a finding from one of our influencers that we've been deploying around the state, and she posed this question to her followers: "Are you ready to start traveling locally by car?" And look at that response rate. 92% said yes, give me ideas. People are ready to go, but from everything we're seeing, they're ready to go with caution. And even in our own state, we're seeing that people are interested in traveling locally, perhaps in greater numbers than they have before. We've seen, and they're seeking those outdoor wide open spaces. Our Colorado State Parks has seen visitation going through the roof at our Front Range state parks, where visitation is up 50% at some of the most accessible state parks. But overall, Colorado State Park visitation is up 33% for the first half of the year compared with 2019. We've also seen an 80% increase in applications for fishing licenses from in-state residents, 10% increase from out-of-state residents. You know, it's clear that people are interested in traveling and they're interested in getting outdoors. But again, we need to make certain that we're preparing people well to embrace the behaviors that are going to keep all of us safe and others safe as well as they're traveling from home. So we really started off our campaign effort this time around by telling travelers how to travel. And this is what really led to our new definition of responsible tourism. At first, I was calling this our resident receptiveness initiative, because we were really taking these steps to reassure residents that we were educating travelers before we sent them their way. But along the way, we've really discovered that this messaging is just as important to travelers about making them feel safe and secure while they're traveling as well. But this new definition of responsible tourism is building on our past message of inspiring visitors to show care for destinations. Now we're telling them, please also show care for those people who call those destinations home. And as I was saying, we're finding support from our research partners that this message is just as impactful for travelers as it is for people who live in destinations. This destinations analyst research from a few weeks ago was showing that people who live in destinations and have confidence that their destinations are taking the proper steps to manage transmission are far more likely to want to welcome visitors into their midst. So it really behooves all of us to make certain that we are doing our part as destination managers to support the sharing of these kinds of messages with our travelers and our residents as well. Our inspiration for this new message about responsible tourism really took its inspiration from work we had been doing for a few years in Colorado that all stemmed from development of our Colorado Tourism Roadmap, which was a strategic plan not just for the Colorado Tourism Office, but for the Colorado tourism industry. And in the course of doing that work, we had identified a new objective for Colorado tourism to focus on building destination stewardship to protect the integrity of our Colorado tourism resources through sustainable tourism. And so we had been doing quite a lot of work in this area already, really over the previous 3 years. And so when the time came to share a new message with travelers, we already had a great foundation to build upon. So we had our objective had really incorporated dispersing travelers throughout our state at that time to less visited destinations. Our chief tool for doing this was creation of a a online resource called Road Trips, which now has more than almost 200 itineraries, taking residents to less visited parts of, or taking travelers to less visited parts of our state with a soup to nuts itinerary of places to go, things to do, and places to eat, just making it very easy to set off and into unexplored territory. This is now serving as the backbone of a lot of the work we're doing today to take travelers and educate them about how to travel responsibly as well. One of the ways we're doing this is with a sustainable tourism message. About this itinerary talks about road tripping without a car. And this is the whole itinerary along the Front Range where you can use public transportation and other sources of travel to find your way to some really pretty interesting destinations over a 3-day itinerary. But really the foundation of our program has grown out of the partnership that we established with Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics, which happens to be based just 30 miles up the road from Denver, Colorado. And we were the first state tourism office to approach Leave No Trace with an interest in developing shared messaging about sustainability for travelers. And so we set out to develop that new messaging back in 2018, launched it over the Memorial Day weekend that year. And that has really, as I said, been the foundation of all of the communication that we've been doing to travelers about traveling sustainably in our state. The first thing that we introduced was the Are You Color-Ready brochure. As you see, the green border is framing our 7 Leave No Trace Care for Colorado principles, which are customized specifically for Colorado. Leave No Trace's messaging was based on their 7 principles. We jazzed them up quite a bit. We made them kind of a little snappier version than they had come up with. So ours say things like stick to trails and trash the trash and leave it as you found it. So just quick, memorable messages for travelers. And we share it all in a very fun and engaging way, not a preachy way at all. And the centerpiece of our initial work was this video, which some of you may already have seen, but if you haven't, let me share this 2-minute video with you that encapsulates our 7-year Colorado principles.
Care for Colorado, it's the only one we got. Respect the place, leave no trace, you'll really help a lot. Here's how we do it. 1. Know before you go, and go where fewer people go, and keep yourself hydrated. Disposables are overrated. 2. Stick to the trails, the Rocky Mountains don't have rails. A new path may seem fun, but it causes lots of erosion. 3. Leave it as you found it, the flowers and the trees. We don't need to know who you dated in 1983. Care for Colorado, it's the only one we got. Respect the place, leave no trace, you'll really help a lot. 4. Trash the trash. Do we really need to write a clever lyric about putting your trash in the trash can? And keep in mind, you'd hate to find the domestic critters leave behind. 5. Be careful with fire, make sure they're out and won't grow higher. Even a little cigarette haze could cause a major forest blaze. 6. Keep wildlife wild, they may be cuddly and cute, but don't give them food, I'm telling you, dude, best not get them riled. 7. Share trails and parks in every kind of weather. Be respectful of each other's space. We're all in this together. Care for Colorado, it's the only one we got. Respect the place, leave no trace, and thank you. You really help a lot.
Okay, we even have an Are You Color-Ready quiz that people can take to show that they actually absorb the lessons of our of our Care for Colorado video. And then we have used the blue bear and the elk as our Care for Colorado ambassadors, and they are now starring in 4 new etiquette videos that tackle issues such as sticking to trails and campfire safety, wildlife etiquette, and my personal favorite, the etiquette of poop, disposing of pet waste and other waste in our public lands. Hand in hand with this work about educating travelers, we've also been creating ways for travelers to visit our state in sustainable ways and reduce their carbon footprint. And a key initiative along these lines has been the work of electrifying our 26 national scenic and historic byways. And we've just launched this new scenic and historic byways site. We're on track for electrifying 4 of those byways by spring. 2 of them are already electrified. Another 6 will be developed by June of 2021. And the state is on track to electrify 23 of the 26 by June 2023. So this is going to offer our visitors a really compelling way to travel in the future without leaving much of a carbon footprint. So you'll be hearing more about that in coming years. Along the way, and then another tenet, another objective of our steward pillar was to create this messaging and create alliances along the way with aligned organizations who could serve as springboards for this messaging and make certain that this message, the messaging that we were creating, was being shared widely with a variety of audiences. And so we now have close to 14 partners. We've been signing up federal agencies recently to be our partners as well. We have a partnership underway with the Colorado Department of Transportation, the Scenic Byways Commission, Greater Outdoors Colorado, the Bureau of Land Management, Stay the Trail, U.S. Forest Service are all partnerships that are coming together in addition to these that already have been established. So we've built this wonderful network for being able to share everything that we've been producing. And along the way, we were doing this, as I said, initially because we were hearing concerns as we were doing our strategic planning process from different destinations and people around Colorado who were telling us they were starting to get worried about the impacts of travelers on their destinations. And they were starting to see this phenomenon of too many visitors in the same place at the same time, which has since become known as over-tourism. But we were detecting it at an early stage in Colorado. So we really built these initiatives to address those concerns. But along the way, we started seeing that this was turning into a competitive advantage for Colorado. We've been, since summer of 2017, we've been measuring visitor attitudes toward the importance of sustainability. And we've seen the importance growing steadily over those years. And in our most recent study, we were seeing that the increase in the number of, or the percentage of people who are saying that a destination's sustainability practices is very important to their selection of a destination has averaged at about 27%. You can see the biggest interest is among the younger group of travelers, those age 25 to 34, which points us, definitely to the importance of this issue in the future. But we've seen sharply increasing interest in travelers age 55 and older, and continuing interest in travelers ages 35 to 64. We've also seen that these age cohorts also believe that Colorado, as a result of all this work, is among the states that is doing a very good job of protecting and preserving its natural resources. So there are benefits beyond protecting the environment for us as tourism destination managers. So this became, all of the work that we had been putting into place over these years became sort of the natural springboard for the latest messaging that we needed and wanted to create about addressing resident concerns about visitors and protecting those people in addition to our destinations around our state. And we call this initiative Creating Care Care for Coloradans. So we put together a new edition of that Are You Colo Ready brochure. We call it the Responsible Travel Edition. And the Colorado packing list now includes such things as a mask and hand sanitizer. The Act Like a Local tips include such information as, making certain that you're aware of local requirements so that, you're not surprised by extra steps locals have taken to, to protect their destination from COVID transmission. And we launched very early on this, in early June, this new video, Care for Coloradans, which outlines, it's 45 seconds, and it outlines the 5 steps you should know in a similar vein to those other videos that you saw. Whoops. There we go.
Visiting us in Colorado, here's a few things you should know. 5 steps will help protect us all, no matter where you go. Space! How about a ski between you and me? Mask! Keep one in your pocket in case you need to rock it. Clean! Wash your hands and be careful what you touch. Stay! Feeling sick, stay home, protect others, thanks a bunch. No! Follow the guidelines wherever you go. Stay up to date and in the know. These 5 steps are just a start to help us all do our part. Thanks for listening to our tips. We hope you all enjoy your trips.
All right. So we have been, when we launched our in-state campaign, which was a first ever event for Colorado tourism, we were only cleared to market in-state, and we're still under that status. But we introduced our campaign with that video because we thought it was important first to explain to travelers how to travel as we were reigniting their interest in getting out of their homes and starting to contribute to the economy. All of our campaign creative leads back to, this is the Care for Colorado Content Hub. So we've aggregated all of the content that we've created for Care for Colorado, including the Care for Coloradans initiative, into one convenient place for visitors and residents to access. So if you click at the bottom of our colorado.com website, you'll see a line for Care for Colorado. We also aggregated all of the materials that we created for this initiative into an industry toolkit. Excuse me, on the previous slide. An industry toolkit. So we have a Care for Colorado Principles toolkit and a Care for Coloradans Responsible Tourism toolkit that includes downloadable posters, the video, social posts, and other materials that any destination, organization, business, or private person can use to share these messages far and wide. We also just launched a new module for our Colorado Concierge Hospitality Training Platform. You can see the bottom one. The bottom one is called Colorado Safety, and it really is a module, about a 45-minute training, free and available to all businesses and frontline workers to help prepare them to share information about, to help Colorado travelers steer clear of various hazards in our state. We prepared this in partnership with UC Health, a nonprofit health provider, and we were just about to launch it in March when the world changed. And so we added information to that module of informing frontline workers about COVID and transmission, and then how they can inform travelers to embrace good health practices. We have another module soon to be in development, training these frontline workers about how to deal with these unique hospitality challenges that are arising these days in advising residents to, embrace good practices, how to deal with guests who are not, fully bought into these practices. We have a mandatory mask wearing order in Colorado, which does take the heat off frontline workers, but they still are sometimes in a position where they have to explain to people why this is important. So we think it's really important to continue supporting our frontline workers through this time. The other thing we did that was a little different this time around was asking our destinations to tell us if they were ready to be promoted. We wanted to make certain that we weren't getting crosswise of any county governments or county public health authorities who might not be supportive of bringing outside visitors into their communities. And so we wanted to make certain that we were working closely with our destination partners to have them give us a verbal yes, to use the airline industry language, about whether they truly were willing to be called out in Colorado Tourism Office promotions, in our public relations program, in social posts, and so on and so forth. And if they said yes, we compiled their information in this What's Open in Colorado online resource guide. We've had incredible traction with this. This is where we keep all of the information about our COVID messaging for consumers, along, as I said, with the promotional information as well. But the call out, the banner you see across the top of the page about traveling in Colorado, face coverings are mandatory in indoor public spaces. Check out the What's Open in Colorado, What's Open online guide. And it also points people to our 1-800-Colorado number. We haven't actively promoted our 800 Colorado number for years upon years. We've really relied on Colorado.com, and so many state tourism offices have relied on their websites to do the heavy lifting for filling in visitors about what's available. But we saw an opportunity this year and believed that visitors were going to be looking for a live person to connect with, to ask their questions about what was open and what the expectations were for traveling in Colorado. And that hunch truly paid off. We've seen a tenfold increase in calls to Colorado.com, to 800 Colorado over the past 3 months since introducing this number, and a fivefold increase over year to year for the same month that we were measuring these results. And we're sharing that all of this messaging, this fun message about keeping a ski between you and me. In our Colorado Welcome Centers, that round message you see is a floor decal. That's how we're advising visitors to our Welcome Centers to stay 6 feet apart. As you can see, we've continued to embrace that kind of fun tone in our messaging, rather than a preachy tone or finger wagging tone, just to make people smile about this and not feel like they're being preached at, but sharing this message in a way that makes them want to join us. So this is the other messaging, please use consideration before touching the brochures. We've set up a whole system for recycling brochures somebody may have touched but then decided not to take, so we can store those for a couple of days and then put them back on the shelves. And then, of course, advising people to wear a mask in public to prevent the spread of germs. Our Care for Colorado video in a slightly reduced length, 35 seconds, is soon going to be appearing on gas station pump screens as part of our fall initiative. Those should be popping up on screens at 55 gas stations and strategic locations around the state next week. And we hope this continues to spread the word among both residents and visitors to our state. By laying the groundwork for explaining to visitors how to travel, that gave us the opportunity then to share a message about why it's important to travel now. As I've been referencing all along, we've been sharing our destination stewardship messaging first, and then we've continued to share it hand in hand with our destination promotion. And it has been really falling on very receptive ears. Destinations around the state are always thrilled to learn how actively we're promoting the responsible tourism messaging. County commissioners have given their support for tourism promotion because, and many of our destinations are doing similar things to reassure their local residents and their visitors that they're paying a lot of attention to making certain they're promoting safe conditions for both residents and visitors alike. Our Explore Colorado landing page, which was the landing page for our summer campaign, prominently features this information about caring for Colorado and Coloradans. And as I said, this allows us to share promotion of Colorado in a safe space and in a safe way. And so let me just close my presentation today by sharing with you the message that we've been sharing with our travelers since about June, about what happens when we do explore, the good things that come about.
When we climb our mountains, we lift up our neighbors. When we travel nearby, we help others go farther. When we hike our trails, see our sights, eat our food, and stay the night, we make Colorado stronger. Because every time we go outside our house, we support everything inside our state. Let's explore our incredible, colorful backyard. Our home state, our Colorado.
As I said, that was an in-state campaign. We've had amazing response. The Care for Colorado videos have, the paid placements we've had with those have had a 98% completion rate. That compares with an industry benchmark of 90%. So we know these messages are hitting home with people and making people feel good about travel at a time when travel can be very challenging. So I think I've left plenty of time for questions. Happy to hear from you if there's any thoughts or questions from the audience.
If you would like to please enter your questions into the Q&A box, I'll go ahead and read those off to Kathy. I already see that we've got one. Let's see. Oh, as an FYI, today is the birthday of national parks. Thank you, Federico, for letting us know. That's fantastic. Any other questions from our attendees? All right, Kathy, here's a question for you. How has your state's budget been affected?
Can't we just talk about happy things? Actually, you know, we ended up with about an 18% cut in our budget, which is substantial. It was close to a $4 million cut from the $20.1 million appropriation that we'd had in previous year or last year. We've been, as you might suspect, we took the largest hit in international tourism, but virtually every aspect of our program did get a reduction. The one area of our budget we really tried to protect was our media budget. So that has been preserved because we believe that's going to be a key to driving recovery in the future. And we certainly want to be ready to promote international tourism again when the time comes.
All right, Kathy, the questions are coming in, so I hope you're ready. I have one in the chat box from Rachel. Have you been able to capture resident sentiment around this effort? How are communities embracing this messaging?
We have not captured resident sentiment specifically on the Care for Coloradans message. The resident reaction to our Care for Colorado messaging was extremely supportive. We saw that because that was something we were early on measuring resident reaction to all of the things that we were doing. Early on, we saw that residents in Colorado were extremely supportive. 80% had a positive response to spending state tourism dollars to promote off-season destinations. 78% were very positive about promoting lesser visited destinations. And this was at a time, you know, before COVID, when Colorado residents were starting to experience you know, that phenomenon of too many people in the same place at the same time, but they still were very supportive of tourism. With when we introduced the Care for Colorado messaging, we saw that within a year, it wasn't even quite a year, 26% of Coloradans said that they were familiar with the Care for Colorado messaging, which was extraordinary. First, our researcher was saying only 26% are familiar with your messaging. And I was saying, well, that was in only the first 10 months after we introduced it. And he said, wow, that's extraordinary. So, you know, we believe the the awareness is only growing. In fact, with this statewide coalition, we're actually joining to launch a Recreate Responsibly week next week. And so the Care for Colorado messaging is going to be appearing on CDOT highway signs. Each day, there will be a new message like stick to trails, trash the trash. And so this messaging is going to be in front of, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of travelers next week.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm going to stop sharing our presentation, so don't let it scare you guys when our faces get bigger.
Okay.
All right, here's a question from one of our buyers, Kathy. How is Colorado for multi-generation travel?
Colorado is uniquely well situated for multi-generational travel. And in fact, we have we do have a wide range of family travelers. Probably the sweet spot for our travel audience is right around age 45, 47. And that really points to the fact that we have a lot of families and older members of the family often leading the charges. Dude ranches, in fact, are one of sort of the premier family experiences. But, with all of the vacation rentals around our state, those provide really perfect settings for families to come. And with the range of activities our state offers, backpacking, hiking, scenic drives, and then of course, everything from whitewater rafting to stand-up paddleboarding to you name it. There's ways for different age groups to plug into whatever is happening in our state, whatever level of interest there is. So it's a great destination for families.
Thank you. What recommendations do you have for smaller destinations trying to maintain marketing efforts with limited budgets and smaller staff?
Mm-hmm. We're actually putting together a whole session on this with some top industry leaders for our first ever virtual governors conference, which is happening September 17th. And I would encourage you to register for that. It's just $50, and we have a lineup of really outstanding content. But one of our presenters in that group is going to be Steve Paganelli of TripAdvisor, and he's going to be outlining some really cost-effective ways of getting your message in front of consumers, as are the other panelists. Content is going to be making certain you have powerful content is going to be really important, especially, it's always important, but it's especially important right now. People are still seeking out information about destinations. Unbelievably, we saw a 13% jump in traffic on Colorado.com from last July to this July. And that was driven by the fact that people were exploring those outside destinations. Spending is way down, but interest is way up. So it's vitally important to make certain you're putting your best foot forward during these times through good content.
Thank you. All right, I've got a two-part question for you from Cassie. What are we considering high-value travelers during COVID-19? And how do you recommend DMOs who are looking to targeting these types of markets instead of general brand destination awareness?
Mm-hmm. That is such an interesting question right now. Colorado is in the same position as many other states right now, where we are seeking permission to market from our state public health officials, our state authorities, because any kind of promotion, again, has to go hand in hand with containment. There's a number of states across the nation that went out, aggressively into the market to revitalize the tourism economy, and they had to roll back those efforts. And some of them are even in a position right now where they can't even market in state. So I guess I can't stress enough the importance of making certain that, that we're leading these efforts in conjunction with state priorities. That means our definition of a high value traveler has changed profoundly. We used to, our campaign was always directed at a national audience because Colorado's a national destination. But now we find ourselves talking to in-state residents. We've never had a campaign directed specifically at in-state residents, and we're not being as selective about those targets as we have been in the past. We really are just trying to find ways to get our messaging out in front of residents, because we think this is also a time, as you saw from the TV spot I shared with you, it was not only about inspiring people to travel, it was helping our residents understand why it's important to travel and why travel supports the economy, it supports jobs, and by taking part in that, they're helping restore their economy. So it's a different message, and it's a message that's operating at multiple levels these days.
Perfect, thank you. Do you expect that responsible will mean less journeys per individual, but each one longer in duration?
It's so interesting. We're finding so many interpretations of responsible tourism. I was sharing our new definition of responsible tourism with you. But as you saw embedded throughout my presentation, we're also taking opportunities to help people travel more sustainably. And yes, we know before these concerns arose, there were lots of concerns expressed about the impact on the environment of flying. One of our consultants was sharing an article from the Netherlands about, is travel the new smoking? Are we becoming that industry that has more negative impacts than positive impacts? I would very much, I would strenuously object to that. But I do think we as an industry have to be very mindful about how we invite people to travel. And that's why we've been placing such a focus on creating sustainable ways to travel in our state, and why we're making it a priority to develop these electrified byways, come up with itineraries that allow people to travel sustainably. And we're even developing itineraries around accessible travel. We are working, as so many destinations are today, with new awareness of diversity and equity issues in our country, where we're putting some additional effort into using these itineraries to develop itineraries for specific racial groups or ethnic groups or other types of groups, to make certain that we're developing a truly broad-based approach to reaching out to travelers, of all descriptions.
This is a good tie-in for our next question. Are there considerations to layer in tribal land recognition as part of this messaging for responsible public land recreation?
There absolutely is, and we have a lot of work to do in that area in Colorado. It is, some states have very solid and active partnerships with tribes, and that is work that really needs to be done in a more thorough way in our state. But again, we are actually putting together a brand new advisory group called the Diversity and Travel Advisory Group. We haven't quite announced it yet, so you're hearing it first.
Thanks for the sneak peek, Kathy.
You got a scoop. And that is going to be a group that is broadly reflective of all of the diverse groups in Colorado, because we want to make certain that we are truly sending a welcoming message, not just like a rainbow ad that has, different representations of different people. We've sort of started down this road with influencers from different diversity communities to make certain that we're sharing messages directly with different audiences of travelers. And that's one of the most powerful ways that you can send a welcoming message, is send that message in a way that audience knows the message was directed to them and their interests. So that's our goal. But we're early in this journey, and so we're enlisting the experts to help us figure this out and do it in a thorough and authentic way.
Perfect. All right, this looks like the last question, unless there's any others that you are all holding on to. How difficult has it been for border towns near destinations given the different state mandates? So I believe this is, and please write back if this is an incorrect assumption, but how difficult is it for Colorado to control all of the restrictions given that other states have different rules?
Colorado has never been one of the states that has imposed a quarantine, that has closed its borders in any way. We've really used our border presences to share that responsible tourism messaging to people on their way into our state. So I do know it's difficult in some parts of our country where, early on there were even, sometimes there were law enforcement officials positioned at borders to states. We were never in that position. But we're all trying to work our way through these difficult issues, and I think the tourism industry in particular, for the most part, is leading with grace, leading with ingenuity. And I've been really proud of our industry to see the kinds of solutions that are coming forward and being put into place to support our industry and to support the health of their states and their jurisdictions.
Thank you. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in. Thank you all for being so engaging and for a great discussion. And thank you to Kathy for joining us and being one of our first ever virtual Education Week attendees.
Thank you. And I wanted to say a special happy birthday to Floyd Kennedy.
Happy birthday, Floy.
Happy birthday,
Thank you
Floyd.
guys. Have a good one.